Ever had an inspection program that's just a sea of features and dimensions all over the screen? Well, today I'll show you one of the fastest ways to visually organize your program using the Display Layers feature in ABERLINK3D. Display Layers in ABERLINK3D is a simple way to visually organize your inspection program. As your program grows, features and dimensions can quickly start to overlap, making it harder to see what's going on. The Layers toolbar gives you an easy way to group items together so that you can show or hide certain feature sets, making it much easier to visualize what's going on the screen. They don't affect measurement results, they're purely there for visual clarity while you're programming and dimensioning. For example, this component has holes that line up on the left and right faces. Simply creating a left side and right side layer makes it very easy to visually differentiate those features and dimensions. By separating your inspection into logical feature groups or dimension groups or both, the layers option makes complex programs much easier to understand at a glance. Now let's look at the quickest way to use layers to tidy up an existing inspection. We're firstly going to look at the quick cleanup method. In this example, we already have a very busy program that has accumulated a lot of dimensions and features as we've been going, and we get to a stage where we just want to tidy it up on the screen. So just to go through it initially, if we go to the View Edit toolbar and click on the Display Layers icon, what you'll notice is there's already two layers in there. That is how ABERLINK3D functions at the very core level. So we have layer 1, which is for new features, and layer 2, which is for new dimensions. If we right click on a dimension, for example, you'll see the display layer option automatically is set to layer 2, and for any features it's automatically set to layer 1. So again, that functions fine, but we've got to the stage now in the program where it's far too busy and we want to now graphically break it up. So that's where the display layers comes in incredibly useful. So we click on Display Layers, and what we're going to do is we'll start breaking up the different layers, but we're doing this once the program's created. So we create a new layer. In this example, I'll just quickly tidy up the PCD holes. So I'm going to create 3 new layers. One of them will be PCD holes. Okay. And the idea here is, now that this is created, if we left click on it to highlight it, so once it's highlighted, all we need to do is left click on those features or dimensions and it automatically gets put into that layer. I'll do the same again now. We'll call this PCD hole diameters. Okay, again, because it's highlighted, I can just go around and pick up the diameters for those features, and they're again in their own layer. Do a final one now for PCD hole positions. Again, because it's highlighted, I can just go around and pick these up automatically, and it puts those in those layers. If I hit the green tick now, you'll see those are now available on the newly popped up toolbar. So whenever there's more than the standard 2 layers, the toolbar appears on the screen. And obviously the idea now is we can switch those layers on and off visually. So if I get rid of the core layers, let's say we get rid of the hole positions, you can see there we've got the diameters, and it's far easier to see what's going on there. We can switch that off. We go to PCD hole positions, you can see they're on, and because I also have the PCD hole switched on, we can visualize those. So the idea is once they're done, we could switch them off, switch the remaining ones back on, and just continue going round, creating the layers, clicking on the features that we want, and they go into those layers ready to be switched on and off visually to make it easier to visualize on the screen. So that is the quick cleanup method. We're now going to take a look at the pre-planned method. So this is where we know the layers that we're going to utilize prior to programming. I'm going to program from CAD in this example just to make it a little bit slicker. So you can imagine in this example, let's say we go to the View Edit toolbar and we immediately go to Display Layers. We don't want to use the standard layer 1 and 2, we want to create all the layers that we need initially. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight the two, or check the two here, and combine them into a single layer. I'm then going to rename that layer, and I'll call this reference system. So everything I now create is going to go into the reference system. Okay, so let's just manually measure that reference system now. Set that as a reference, circle, set that as a reference, and then line, set that as a reference. So there we go. The idea as well is if I put these datum letters in, they're all going to go into that layer. So that's the core reference frame, core datum frame as well, all put into a single layer. Now let's say we have these small hole patterns, and this is a detail A on the drawing. So what I'm going to do is go to display layer now, create a new layer, and I'm going to call this detail A features, and then another layer, detail A dimensions. So this is, I'm doing this prior to taking the measurements, and what I'm going to do is highlight the detail A features and set this as the default features layer, and then detail A dimensions, let's just rename that so it looks a little bit neater. I'm going to set this as the default dimensions layer. So you'll see any new features automatically go into the detail A features layer, any new dimensions go into the detail A dimensions layer. So all I need to do now is just pick up these circles. So I'm just using mouse clicks here to take those. So if we right click on any one of these, you'll see it automatically goes into the feature layer. And then if I dimension these now, like so, I can move these around later if needs be. But the idea is, as I'm creating them, they're automatically going into the detail A dimensions layer. Again, at any point once I've finished with these, if I want to free up the screen, I can just switch them off by clicking on the toolbar. So one last go there just to show you. Let's say we have this PCD hole again. So again, display layers, add new layer, PCD holes, features, PCD holes, dimensions. So we break them up prior to doing it, highlight the layer and select that as the new features, highlight the dimensions, select that as the new dimensions, and then again as we go around, so these are just simple mouse clicks. It's going to measure them in the program, so those are automatically created into the features layer, which I can switch on and off, and any new dimensions will go here. And they're automatically put into the layer, and that's because we pre-planned it. That's why we call it the pre-planned method, where we actually go through, create the layers, and then set them as the new features or dimensions, or even in some cases we can set the layer to do both. So that is the pre-planned display layers method. Display layers is one of the fastest ways to make your program clearer, easier to read, and more professional.